Good morning, everyone. Would love to see your faces when you're ready. All right, there you are. Yeah, exciting day today. Class started at 10 a.m. What a nice morning for you all. Um, yeah, we're going to talk about emails today, and we're going to set up, an email sender in Rails, and that's the plan. But first, let me give you kind of the breakdown of how the class will be structured today. We're going to do like 15 minutes of kind of like discussion and like a light reading on SMTP before we get started. And then we'll do some discussion. And then we're going to get into kind of like the code in implementing this functionality. And for that, today we're going to do different kind of approach than y'all watching Ian or I implement it. We're going to do what's called a flipped classroom, and we're actually going to have you all implement it with a driver and a couple of navigators, and we're going to kind of like switch off here and there. So it'll be a fun different kind of learning style, and the hope is that the pace slows down just a bit so that this is there's more time to kind of dig deep, and there's more time to digest this stuff, and Ian and I will kind of be stopping whoever's driving or navigating along the way to add some emphasis and add some tidbits of knowledge. Okay, cool. I'm gonna drop in the chat the link that I want y'all to read. If you don't know anything about SMTP, this is kind of a brief explanation of it. It's the protocol that we use to send emails as opposed to the HTTP we've talked quite a bit about, and that's the protocol that we use to send requests and get a response in the web. Now this one is for sending and receiving emails. All right, so let's take like 5 minutes to read through this. I'll put you in some breakout rooms after that. All right, I'm gonna drop some guiding questions in the chat, and I'll open up these breakout rooms for about 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and discuss as a group.
I think I'm alone in here.
You are. I noticed that.
Okay.
You're supposed to be with Adam, but he's not around. It doesn't look like.
Oh, okay.
So I'm your
Gotcha.
partner.
Great.
So,
Great.
Did you learn anything from that article?
Yes. So SMTP, I think the biggest.
Sorry, everyone.
No, you're good. I think the biggest question and thing that I am curious about is, since SMTP is only for text, I guess, let's see. I mean, it seemed like there was other things that work with it to make all the graphics and things in emails. But that was my biggest takeaway.
Yep, that's true. And SMTP uses MIME, MIME, to do that stuff. And essentially what MIME does is it encodes all of that stuff, all of the graphics and links, things like that, into plain text. And so that SMTP, it can kind of be used as the mule to transfer that stuff. And then it also on the back end then decodes, like usually the server will then decode that and display it in a way that's functional for the user.
Okay. Cool. I'm not sure what is the difference between SMTP and HTTP?
It's a good question. Adam, you got any ideas?
I mean, both transport text, so those are the similarities. I mean, my big takeaway was that SMTP is just, I mean, it's just specific to email servers. I'm sure there are other differences, but for me, it's like the use case that's different.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yep. I think that's pretty good. It's like the similarities and parallels are like they're both protocols in order to send information across the internet, tapping into multiple servers that have to, relay or stop and decode and then re-encode and send across. But I mean, in general, it's a set of rules that everyone has agreed to so that we can transfer information securely.
And Catherine, I apologize for being a couple minutes late to our breakout room. My dog
You're
tried
fine.
to eat an avocado, and apparently they're
Oh,
so.
yeah. No, you're good.
Great.
I thought maybe like I had done something wrong, and I was like, why am I
No,
alone in here?
Totally on me. That's on me.
Okay.
Yeah. When both me and Georgia and I are in meetings, we sort of gotta like decide who has to be the bad person.
Yeah.
So
No problem.
but I know I missed the first question, I think, like the parallels, but I think we kind of covered that, right? They both
Yeah.
have text. And why are emails important? That's a funny question.
Isn't
Yeah.
it? I like how broad it is.
I know. I mean, when in the early days of the internet, wasn't it all email? Like that was it? That's all you did?
I knew that was one of the first things like that, like the internet basically like provided like, oh, wow, we can message one another from far away. I think that's like, even to this day, it's like a medium of communication that everyone is, pretty engaged in daily. If you're an internet user, I know I am, at least. I don't know. I kind of wish I could get rid of email, but I don't see it happening.
Maybe Slack will
Yeah.
replace email.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to close these and
Cool.
bring us back.
Wasn't enough time, Tim. We were in such good conversation.
Damn it. Well, all right. Thanks for the feedback. Let's hear about it. I would love to hear what you all were talking about.
Yeah. We were talking about specifically like why are emails important? And we answered all the questions, but there's some ways where we kind of went down a rabbit hole. But like they're like often used in business communication, and Gus brought up a really good little phrase. They're almost like our web social security number as well, except that you get to have as many as you want.
An analogy.
Yes. And then like also utilized for like business documentation. We were talking about like how a lot of times when you're working somewhere and they try to show you how to do something, they'll like hand you an email that somebody wrote on how to do it instead of like having actual SOPs. And then also being utilized as like this personal archive of like your internet business.
Yeah, I like that a lot. A personal archive of, correspondence, codes, logins, offers, all kinds of things that you might need to search for later. I'd say that's probably like the biggest benefit that I use email for, is like searching for old things that are in email. Yeah, Alex, go ahead.
In one of my old businesses, we had a mailing list of like 176,000 that I'd hit with like a monthly newsletter. And I'm wondering what allowed that to go out. Was there like a rotation through IP addresses? I mean, like if you use a service, MailChimp, whatever it is, what are they doing to get around, say, being limited to 24,000 emails a day?
I think they're probably paying the people that are regulating that, whether that's Google or whoever their server is, their people are that are sending out those emails and responsible for sending and receiving. They're paying them for extra capacity.
Most of those limitations come from the ISP. Like if you are logged into Google and you're trying to send out that many emails, that tends to be rate limited. But if you're using a service like MailChimp or SendGrid, they have pretty much unlimited access to send like millions or billions of emails every day to each of those ISPs. And it's up to the ISP then to say, like, does the message look legit? Did it come from an IP that looks legit? And they're more likely to block based on that kind of information as opposed to, whoa, you're sending me too many. Because the too many has like its own set of rules. That's going like way down a rabbit hole that I'd be happy to nerd out on some other time.
Yeah, I think we can say that Ian's probably the go-to guy for most things. But if there's one thing for sure, it's got to be emails. I mean, SendGrid is like merged with Twilio, public company. So yeah. Phil, what's up?
Yeah, Ryan and I were talking a little bit about like the similarities with HTTP, and we did a little searching and discovered it's a stateless protocol. So I thought that was notable. And then I think a question we were left with was just like, is there a way, kind of like you can create state in HTTP with sessions or cookies? Like, is there a way to create a stateful representation within email, like, or within SMTP?
That's a good question. Generally, with email, the protocol, I kind of like think of it like similar to like Ian's example of, I think, UDP, like, which is going one way. It's like every time you send it, it's one way, right? Like it's going like, yeah, the emailer can reply, but that's a completely new like SMTP. I guess the word would, I'm not sure. I don't want to call it a request because it's not, because there's no response necessary. So it's a one-way track. So I don't think you necessarily need to keep track of state, other than obviously like what is contained within that email. Cool. Go ahead, Sam.
I was just reading the article again, and it was saying that the messages sent out are turned into strings of text that are identified by the purpose of each section. So that kind of sounds to me like an HTTP type of response with, like, I'm guessing it's going to be something like a header, body, stuff like that. I don't know how it's going to be formatted, but that's just what it sounds like.
Yeah, those are some of the similarities, right? Like a header, a body, like certain. I would think of it as really like key value pairs, right? That like point to specific parts of the email. Yeah, that's certainly a similarity. It's like, where's the bulk of this? Like, okay, that's in the body. Like what, we need a subject line. That's like a specific part of email, right? We need an address. So all of these things are going to be specified. The way that they basically break down is like key value pairs. But in SMTP's specific protocol, like the way that that's SMTP needs it to be formatted in order to communicate with the mini servers along the route to the final inbox. Cool. Anything else come up? Any other questions lingering, or ideas, comments? All right, let's take our break now before we get into kind of like the code of the lesson. There are some I would love if everyone attempted to code along with this on their own. If you're not the driver or navigator for the class, I'll be doing kind of the same just in case we need to switch to me driving. But yeah, the lesson plan is in the calendar event, and the first things to do are like clone, bundle, and create your database. So yeah, that's what we'll start with when we come back. Let's come back at 25. All right, it's 25. Let's come back together. Yeah, I just want to give everyone a second to be back and turn on some videos. Cool. All right, I need some volunteers, and you can think of this as you'll forever be in the annals of Turing YouTube history, and mini mods years from now we'll look at this video of how to do emails and think, wow, wonder what those students are doing now. Hopefully that was enticing. We'll see. If I can't get volunteers, then I'll volunteer, but I'd rather have volunteers. And what we need, you can volunteer for any of these positions to start. It's going to be 1 driver, 2 navigators. So I need 3 to start. Cool. Sydney, Max are having some bundles. Cool. All right, Phil, it looks like you've got your hand up. Which position would you like?
I can drive.
Cool. All right, now we need 2 navigators to navigate Phil through some of this lesson plan. Great, Isabel, thank you. And Adam, thank you. All right, great. We've got our 3 to start. Yeah, Phil, I'd love for you to share, and I'll just make sure that we can see everything. For me, I need some zoom in. Maybe a little bit more. Yeah, I think that's great. All right, I'll let Isabel, you and Adam take it away. What should Phil do first?
Sweet. Well, it already seemed like you had the routes up and that you had inspected the page, but for anybody that has missed it, we can go back to that browser, see what our server looks like. And right there, it is inspected. And then we also can look at our routes to make sure that we have that post and advice create. Cool, we do. So I guess let's go back. I realized I didn't ask this question. Let's go back to the browser and see where does this route to, like expect the form input field and where it routes to.
Yeah, and I should make a note. The thing that's not in this lesson plan that we should do first is register as a user.
Okay, beautiful.
So everyone that's listening along, following along, first thing you want to do is register as a user, not in the lesson plan.
Cool.
Now this is the one we want to inspect. And I will shut up.
Okay.
It's like we have, yeah, form action is to the advice route with
Beautiful.
the method of post.
Awesome.
I don't know how to zoom this, but it's pretty small.
No, that's okay. I just have to get really close to the screen. Cool. So great. And we know that that route is also in our routes file. So let's go ahead and go look at that advice controller and see what do we have going on. Cool. Don't have a lot. So that form is going to be asking for a post route. So we need to update that create method to actually do something. So on the lesson plan, it says we need to update the create action where we will call our mailer. So in that underneath, yeah, right where you are right now, we can put recipient equals params underscore friend, or I mean, sorry. Yeah, params, yes, that friends underscore email. Yes, just
Cool.
sweet. So that is going to be the email address of the person that's going to be receiving the message. And then now we need to put in the email info of the information that we want to include in the email message. So we'll go down to, we'll hit enter and go to the next line. do email info equals, and we'll create like a little hash structure with some key values of user colon current user, comma, friend is going to equal params friend's name. Yeah.
Friend name like this.
Yeah, friends as
Cool.
in plural.
Friends.
I guess, like,
Okay.
yeah. Also on line 9, it also needs an S. After
Nice,
friends.
nice catch.
You know, good catch.
Sweet. And then after friend, put a comma there. And then next we will do message. And that will have the value of @advice.message. Cool. So yeah, this is what we're going to be including in that email message, which makes sense. The user is whoever is currently on it. The friend is whoever's friend that is getting passed through that param. And then the message is going to be .message, which makes sense. Okay.
I wonder
Anybody-
what that advice generator looks like, is doing.
Very curious.
Yeah, I was interested.
Generate advice.
I was just curious what our test is doing since I saw it is in there.
Smart, very smart. Okay, so it's returning a string. Cool. Slip advice. Interesting. Does anyone have any questions for the instructors before we move on? I want to know what slip is. What's slip? Tim and Ian. What is that?
We probably have to look at our service, I
Look at
think.
the service.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Layers of abstraction.
Okay.
You can also do a Command Shift F slip and just see where it appears if you're completely, dumbfounded. So it is in the advice service spec, I think. There we go.
Is this on line 4 another way to use like a VCR cassette syntax?
That's correct.
Cool.
Well, then if you go to those documents, the should return and retrieves advice on the left. You can see they have a string slip ID 5. If you go to your search bar, yeah, click on that.
Which one?
The one that says slip, string slip. Cool. So we can see what it's doing now if we go into this. This is a cassette. So without going to the API, we can look at what the cassette's doing with a slip.
Yeah, so it looks like the actual API is adviceslip.com.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense.
If you scroll down, there we go. So slip it seems to be like a hash that contains the hash that contains the information we need. And that must be why it's nested in our other pages in our generator. It's slip and then advice because it's a nested hash.
Beautiful.
I love this process because it's hard to understand something and the scope of something, especially new, if like we don't understand what's already set up for us, right? So this is a good process of where do I look my tests, right? To kind of see what's already set up for me. And then in the case of this cassette, the cassette has a lot of information about like what this request would actually do in the real world if we were hitting the API.
I like that. Sweet.
All right.
So then we can go back to our controller and put in our last little bit underneath. Yeah, underneath this, we will put friend notifier mailer. Yes.
Fire, am I spelling that right?
Yes.
Fire, mailer.
.inform.
Form.
And then pass in the argument email_info, comma, recipient. And then .deliver now. Yeah, deliver _ now.
No, okay.
Yeah. Sweet. And then you're gonna and then it's gonna be a flash notice after that.
Okay.
That will be like, thank you for sending some friendly advice. Great. And now we will redirect to the advice URL.
Vice path like that.
It says advice URL, but I feel like advice path would work.
Should work.
Yeah.
Cool. And Isabel, does it look like we're kind of dream driving here? I'm not sure we've like created the mailer yet. Is that right?
Right. And we also haven't created a test. We haven't created a lot of things.
Yeah.
For this.
But like line 16, like this might not work yet, but we're kind of dream driving. Okay, we kind of think there might be a mailer here. And it'll need this stuff. I don't think it's here yet.
That sounds right to me. And what's if we don't have a test, what's another way we could try out and see what we do have in place for us and what we don't have in place? I'll open that up to the entire class. And entire class, if you have questions, you want to pause, things come up, make sure you can raise your hand or unmute and ask.
Yeah, if we don't have a test, we can always actually just go to the Rails server. I know that's not necessarily what we should be doing, but the lesson plan seems to do that.
Good old browser-driven development works.
Yeah.
And Adam, do you want to take this next part since I want it to kind of like be back and forth?
Yeah, we can switch off.
Cool.
Cool. So maybe log in and try to send some advice and see if we get an error.
Isabel, what's your email? Isabel@email.com. Is that right?
Yes. How did you know?
Cool. Yeah. So I think that's what we expected. Sort of.
Yeah, we don't have a friend notifier mailer class yet, so we can't do much with it.
That's right. Phil, you want to check, is there a spec already for advice controller that we can add to?
Spec.
No.
Look at the file structure here.
Spoiler alert, there is not.
Okay. Cool. Well, we could make a spec for that page that you were on, and so we don't have to go back and forth to Rails server. But group vote.
I think spec is totally fine.
Awesome.
I will speak for the group.
All right, can we do it in this advice generator spec?
I'm letting you all make these decisions.
I think that this generator is the Poro. I think the Poro is responsible for creating. I mean, it's only looking at like what this model is. Like it should be like a feature test maybe.
All right, we do feature test on, yeah, that sounds good.
I guess we have these like can visit a paid spec. Perhaps we just follow this structure and do like a user can send advice or something.
Yeah. Yeah, you might be able to copy some of the code from the user can visit advice page and then move from there.
Okay, user.
And you can always press Command B to get rid of that bar on the left, and then Command B to bring it back. Cool. All right, so we've got this set up, and it's going to visit advice path, which is great. We can make our first scenario or it test, whichever you prefer. I think it is fine. I'm not sure what the difference is. So it can, let's see. What are we doing on the feature page? We're sending advice.
Yeah,
Cool.
we are creating and sending. Yeah.
So just, I guess we have that up here. Is it okay to just repeat it and send?
Sure. The top you could change to like user visits page, but it doesn't matter too much. Yeah, there we go.
Cool. So this and this.
Cool. All right, so on the page, I think we're doing a fill in because we're already there. It's visited the advice path, right? So fill in something. I'm not sure what it is on the page.
Looks like this is.
Interesting. We can go to our view if we can't decipher what input password is.
I want to say it's friend's name.
Friend's name. Yeah. Cool.
Cool. Thanks, Isabel.
Yeah.
Friend's name.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we needed to use the ID or if we could use the tag, but we can do the tag. Cool.
Beautiful. And then we're just going to click that button, send advice.
Yeah, do we put any message in there at this point? Or does that happen after?
Looks like it's an API call that.
Okay, cool. Cool, let's see if that passes and what error we get. I think we'll get the same error, the no mailer.
Okay. Here. Like a VCR error.
Okay, so go to our test and do in the it section. We can do actually we'll have to do it on the above before each.
Up here.
I think it might be after the before each, but we could do it in either place. I think.
So VCR here.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's try that.
Did you do a bundle install? Oh, no. Okay, maybe it needs to go above.
There we go.
Cool.
Beautiful.
All right. So with that error, should we go create this?
Yeah, let's do it. So controllers, advice controller. Yeah, so we can go to the like go to app. There should be a folder called mailers. And if you want to use your terminal, you could do touch. Otherwise, you could use your mouse. But there should be in the terminal, it would be like touch app mailers. And then we could do. Well, let's check if there is an application mailer already. We could work off that. Yeah,
There should be
okay.
one. Yeah.
There.
From what I understand is like when you create a new Rails app, like this is one of the files that is created with it.
Cool. All right, so in the mailer, it should say class application mailer. There's a default friendly, so it's from @example.com. We should change the default to friendly@advice.io. And class, any reason why we're doing that?
Because the lesson plan says so.
Ooh, I know why.
Yeah.
So a lot of ISPs, they'll actually, they're more likely to filter the message as being spam if it comes from an email address that says no reply, because they're assuming, well, if you don't want a user to reply to it, then you're sending it through some automated means, and statistically, it's way more likely to be spam. So putting like an actual from address on there is good. The ISP generally won't validate that that's actually a real address, but some will. And if it's not a real address, it'll also mark it as spam or just drop it completely and not even deliver to their spam box. So good little trivia bits to know.
You're muted, Adam.
Thank you. So the next step would be to create the friend notifier mailer so we can actually send advice.
Wait. What does layout mailer do?
So if we go to our layouts, I'm assuming if we go to app view layouts, there's probably a layout that would apply to this. Yeah, mailer. So let's check that out.
Oh, but why do we have two of them?
So probably one's for HTML and one's for text, I'm assuming.
But why do
looks
we
like
have both?
so there's connected here. So there's a yield tag inside of the mailer HTML, and then this is the actual like. I've never seen a text.erp file, but
cool.
Does anybody know why we have both?
I could take a guess. Sometimes Gmail asks me if I want to send a text-based response or Outlook. And maybe in that case, it skips some of this, HTML data and just goes right to the yield if that option is selected.
So it has to do with the email client that's receiving it. They may not be able to actually view and process HTML-based emails. And so when we send email, we generally want to send both plain text and HTML at the same time. And basically what will happen is the email will actually send both at the same time in the same message. And it's up to the email client to be able to separate those two pieces and say, if I can show HTML, I'm going to do the HTML. If I can't, I'm going to fall back to the plain text version, which is why we have the same yield command in each of these. But it's going to be an interesting rabbit hole to go down, not right now in this class, but as you're researching into some of this, the limitations that you have on HTML-based emails. Email clients are not typically like full browser compliant HTML parsing engines. Even if you're using Gmail in a browser, it's not going to be able to do all the stuff that a regular web page can do. And so your HTML is far more limited. Like it can't load style sheets. And so that's why you see in the layout that all your CSS styling has to be inline. So you're far more limited on how you can actually structure and lay out the actual HTML of the page, as far as like what the message is going to look like.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely important to keep in mind. Sam, did you have something to add? So you had your hand up before.
I just thought that the separation of the actual body being like the title and the message itself is a purpose, but I guess not.
Cool. All right.
Cool. All right, so we have the application mailer. We did a few tweaks to make sure that it doesn't get noted as spam, and we made sure that we have a text mailer layout. Now we need to make our actual mailer. So in that same folder, we'd create a, we'll generate a friend notifier mailer, and you can actually use the Rails shortcut. So it's Rails G or generate mailer, and then friend notifier in snake case. Yeah. Sorry, not snake case. What's the other one called?
Camel case.
Camel case, that's right.
Technically, this is Pascal case.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that would be camel.
Cool.
Yes.
Okay, Pascal case, nice.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So just a note I'm reading here. So when you do this, the generator ignores our -t that we used to create the Rails app. Remember those like things that we did? I think the -t set us up to work with RSpec. I'm not too sure, but it'll create this test folder that we need to delete. And if anyone has more color on that, speak up.
Yeah, I just want to add, like, if we're kind of like inching towards, you know, using technical language, that -t is a flag. All right, and so generally when we use that Rails new command, we give Rails a couple of flags, right? Like some of the things we do is like, all right, skip turbo links, yeah, -t. So like, let's skip the test folder because we are using RSpec and we're going to use a spec folder. Yeah, so.
Cool, thank you. So that flag, it like we already had a test folder, but you could see that it's adding. Well, let's see, did it create the test folder itself? Yeah, we could remove the whole test folder if you'd like. Cool.
There it goes. Cool.
All right. So now we have our mailer inside the app mailers. Cool, nice. So let's start writing. So we've got to inform, we've got to make an inform method here. So it's def inform, and we'll have some parameters we pass in. So I'm assuming since we created in our controller, we have like some recipient info and we have some like email info. So it'll be info, comma, recipient. Those are the things that we would pass in. All right. And then we need to define those. So we can go at user. And if you open the controller maybe to the right, we could look at what it was. What we had.
Advice controller.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and just one note on this inform method. This is just the method that we dream drove. Like there's nothing special about naming it inform. You could name this kind of like whatever you wanted.
Cool. Cool. So we have user, friend, and message. So let's do at user equals info bracket colon user. And then at message, info message, and then at friend. We can do all three of those. And I believe we don't need commas for these because we're just defining variables.
Oh yeah, good catch.
Cool. I got a way harder one, Isabel.
You're doing great.
All right.
Line 3, there's a bracket missing.
Cool, thank you. All right, so in line 5.5, we'll do a nice space, and then we'll write some mail code. So mail, open parentheses. Let's just do a new line here to make it cleaner. And we can do a reply underscore to colon at user.email. And what this does is it allows a recipient to hit reply on the email, and then the response can come back to us instead of a default friendly at advice. If we didn't have that, I think it would go back and reply to friendly@advice.io or whatever we had there. Here we can do a comma, and we can do a to, because that's a necessary field in our email, and it could be a recipient, which is an input in our inform, and then subject. And then what do you all want to say in our subject? I think we should put their name in. So maybe string interpolate Octothorpe at user.name, because we've got that at user up there. And then what do you all want to say?
Please be creative here.
I won't talk then. I'll let somebody else be creative.
Cool. Subject at username, and then we can write, hey, here's some shit you don't know. No, let's not use shit, because we learned that in mod 2 that you shouldn't put anything you don't want employees read. Hey, hey, here's some advice you didn't ask for. There you go.
I love that. Okay, wait, though. There's one thing that I don't understand. So this, I don't remember defining a mail method. Where do you get this from? Where's this come from?
It's a great question. So where is our mail method?
Not here. Is
Not
it
here.
maybe a like provided method from Action Mailer base? Inherited, I should say.
Liam says some things just work. You can't explain it.
Max says, by the way, it should be at friend.name with that subject line.
There's a hint in the lesson plan. Hey, that looks like a good place. Do you want to make that full screen real quick and zoom in? So I linked this in the lesson plan, but I want to give you all a chance to look at it and kind of see your options for this method.
Cool. So mail is built in.
So we have two from
Reply to.
Yep,
That's the
reply to.
Cool. Beautiful. It looks like you can CC and BCC, which is cool. We're not putting up from here, but there's a reply to. So I suppose you can get that. I wonder if those will auto-populate depending on their client. Cool. And Max, I think you did find a typo in the lesson. My gut says it should be hey friend name, not your name. So
I think it depends on the structure of that subject, because like the way they wrote it in the lesson plan is like
okay.
at username is sending you some advice, so then that would make sense. But
Nice.
in ours, where we're being like, hey friend person, here's things.
Yeah. I think it'd be nice to have a from, but I'm not sure if that'll auto-populate.
Well, I don't know. If you want a from, I think it's okay to deviate from the lesson plan based on you learning new information.
Nice. Let's do a from, Phil, and we'll do from at user.name. See if that works. Cool. All right. So if you go to our, we don't have, well, actually, let's run our test and see what happens. If you compress Control K or Command K, I like get confused with all the text. Yeah, thank you.
Could we pull up the test file so we could have it side by side?
And also, Ian made a comment, Phil, I know you're driving, that the visit advice path should probably not be in the before each. We should just put that in our actual test. To make it, yeah, there we go. And then we'll have to move the VCR too, because the VCR works on that advice path, I believe.
Since you're putting it on the describe, it'll actually apply to everything on there, I think. I think everything, like every test under the describe is going to use that VCR, I think, at that point.
Cool. All right, we can look at our our error.
Ian, were you saying we could keep the VCR up in the describe block?
I think so.
So it'll apply to all the it blocks if we want that same VCR or same
I think
cassette?
I think it just flags like all of the tests inside that describe block are going to use VCR. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to share the same VCR cassette, but I think it flags all of them as using VCR. It may work. If it doesn't, then you'll have to put it on each individual test. I like putting it on each individual test because some of them I may not want to use VCR, and it'll give you the flexibility that way.
Well, good question there. I think this is a good place for a quick break. We've got ourselves an error message, and we'll go into that when we come back. But let's come back at 05.
Welcome back. Isabel Manhattan's class.
Welcome. Okay, so let's start back up. Let's have Phil share again. Sound is out 1 sec. Okay, that's all right. And we'll see if we can figure out this error. I would love to switch up I think the best way to do this is switch up our navigators, but keep our driver, just so we're in the same place. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Isabel. Y'all did great. Any other volunteers to navigate? Great, I get to choose. I love this game. Cool. Let's go with let's go with Liam and Sydney.
I knew as soon as I sat down to eat my breakfast, you were going to be like, Sydney's going to talk. I knew it. I felt it.
You see, well, I'm glad that you had, some precursor to what was coming.
All right.
Right now, 1 second.
I don't remember what's going on. What was our error message, Phil?
Yeah, let me I'll run it again real quick.
I think at friend or something.
So looks like
Line 11. Subject, maybe?
Yes, I would think so. Because how we're passing this in, you can't call .name on it because it is a string. It's not a class. That's a string.
Yeah, let's be sure. Let's put a pry on 6.
Look at it.
all right. What should I check?
Friend.
And then do @friend.class just to see.
It's like a string.
Wow. Yes, I am a string.
So why can't you just call at friend?
So I think we can.
Line 11.
That seems like a good idea to me.
Missing template. Oh, so we need a view.
All right, now, navigators, I'm going to push on you a little. Phil's waiting for you.
Okay, sorry. I'm eating at the same time. I apologize. Okay, so missing template. So we're going to do a friend notifier mailer. Okay, then what are we going to here? Mailer, inform. So then inform.
I have just a clarifying question for Tim or Ian or anyone else. So looks like it's the friend notifier mailer or like any mailer. It's looking for a view that's named the same as a method. So it's kind of like this is an action, like similar to a controller. Is that fair to say?
Yep. Yeah, I was gonna say I like that analogy. It's very similar and for our purposes today, behaving the same way.
So then is it just inform.html.erb? Within this
.text.erb too.
Yeah, you'll need both.
Missing an M in the in4.text.
Now what do we do?
Well, we could run the test again and see if it sees it.
I like it.
Okay, so the test passed, but
Not everything that we need to be testing.
It looks like this test did pass, but we didn't actually assert anything, right?
Yeah, like we're not.
We didn't check that it did what it was supposed to.
Are we just gonna do like an expect page or something to have like what our view has?
Which currently it has nothing. So
Not quite. It's
Well-
not necessarily a page on this one because we're not rendering a page. We have an email, so we got to figure out a way to grab the email.
can we store the email in a variable? Can we do that?
It looks like we can do that, looking from the lesson. We'd have to do something with this thing called mail catcher. It's a gem in order to do that, I believe.
So Mailcatcher won't actually play into the test. Because this is a feature test,
Mm-hmm.
we're really testing like what does our user see who's sending the advice? Like what is their experience? Their experience is that they're not the one getting the email. Their experience is they're coming to the page, they're filling in this form, they're hitting send advice, and what happens after that. That's what this test is. If you really want to test, like, did the email send and is the structure of that email the same? Then you're going to have to write an action mailer test.
So then are you just looking for like, as the user, like a flash notice that it was successful, or?
Yep. So like what page should they end up on, and they should see that flash message that you've got on line 17. Just for the sake of time, just
Okay.
So
So expect path, yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
cool, that passed.
Everybody okay with this test and what we're looking for here?
Yes.
I might comment out the actual implementation on line 18 to actually fail it, and then I don't know, just for verification, but it seems good.
Looks like it's looking for it. Doesn't find it when it's commented out. So I think
Yeah.
that's good. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I like that approach.
Cool. Do y'all think we should have some like content in these emails?
Yes.
Why not? Let's do it. Let's go here. Can I see your controller actually? Where is your controller? What do we have? So we're giving the advice. Okay. Advice generator. Can you, sorry, I was way behind you guys, so mine, I'm not actually not where you are in mine. Can you tell me what advice is? Can you show me that in Prairie? What is that? Or if you know it off the top of your head.
So it's coming from the API. So advice generator is a
Give me the message. Okay.
it's calling advice service. Advice service. API call to this adviceslip.com.
Okay. So expect the mail to text by so. Okay. So in this test, it looks like we need to write a new test to say what we want to see there.
So a new test in this file using consent advice.
Yeah, that's fine. And the email info. Enters that, enters the body. I love the silence. It's awesome. Okay. Just trying to get you all our consent advice.
We need to test if we can fill in an advice form, or
That's kind of what we're doing here.
well, I saw that it was like the names and stuff, but do we have to like give it the actual advice itself?
No. So let me pull up the localhost. So this is the advice form, and when you click send advice, it's coming to the advice controller and creating advice, and that's where, so the advice is being generated through the advice service API call.
And so then it's just grabbing whatever message is in that API as the message. Okay.
Yeah, let's pry in right here on 15, and just so you can visualize what advice is and then what advice.message is.
So let's see what advice is.
Advice generator object.
Stop message. Looks like a VCR error.
So let's take a look at the VCR error before we go looking at other code. Let's make sure we understand why VCR is complaining, because that'll tell us maybe what we need to go fix. So here it's saying an HTTP request is trying to go to api.adviceslip.com/advice, and it's using the following cassette. And something about that cassette doesn't match what we're trying to do. So if we go open up that cassette, and if we go look at the request here, so just pull this window down a little bit. So we see it's doing a GET. It's going to HTTP api.adviceslip.com/advice. Let's go back to our VCR error. Does that path match? Can you pull that window down just a little bit? So we're trying to do a GET on api.adviceslip.com/advice.
Like it.
That looks like it matches to me.
Yeah, it's like it looks like it matches to me.
Yeah. So the first thing I would try is just deleting the cassette and see if it works. If that doesn't help, then there's something else going on.
There it is.
Huh. It's interesting that it fails silently like that, because we call it, up there in that email info, and still it fails silently, even though there was an issue with it.
Okay, so then can we put that stuff into the view? We can put it in our test first, that we're expecting to see the message and that we're expecting to see
so that's going to be a different kind of test. Again, we're right now the test that we have on the right pane is a feature test, which is the user who's sending the advice, and they're not going to see the message. Like if I'm sending that message to Sydney, Sydney's getting the email. I'm the one sending the email, and I don't know what's in that email. I'm just saying, go send some friendly advice to Sydney, or in this case, Isabel. But Isabel is the only one who knows what the content of that message is, and so our test shouldn't.
Oh, so you're
shouldn't check
informing
that.
yourself in your inform HTML?
Well, the inform is the outgoing email message that's going to go to Isabel. And that's going to be a different kind of test. So our feature test right now is finished. From my perspective, if I'm sending advice to Isabel, from my perspective, that work is complete. I can click on a button and I think it's going to send an email. I don't know for sure, but now we're going to need a different kind of test so that we can make sure that did that email actually structure properly? Did it have the content that we expected it to have? And so we're basically going to make a unit test for our inform method here in our mailer. But that's going to be a different kind of test. It's not going to be a feature test. It's going to be a mailer test at this point. And that's down towards the bottom of the lesson plan if you want to talk through that. But that's how we're going to test that. Now, if you actually want to see that the email did get sent, you're going to have to run Mailcatcher. But in test mode, Rails will not actually try to queue up and send an actual email because you're in test mode. It doesn't want to actually spam somebody or send like a real email by mistake. We actually did that at SendGrid one time. Somebody thought that they were using a test database to test sending about 250,000 newsletters full of gibberish and lorem ipsum Latin text. But they weren't in test mode. They were actually on a staging system, and it actually went out to 250,000 real users who then got really angry why they were getting this gibberish message that nobody could read because nobody knows how to read Latin anymore. And so in test mode, we don't actually want to send real email. So the only way that we can actually test that this is working would be to fire up Rails S and in another terminal, start Mailcatcher, which will then, you'll have a way to open that in your browser and you'll be able to actually see whether that message actually sent. So it'll be what we call like user testing, where you're actually going to be the user testing that this actually works in the browser, and then in Mailcatcher that the recipient would actually get that email. But there is a way to write a test that makes sure that our action mailer is actually working properly, and that's at the bottom of the lesson.
Yeah, so this is basically two ways of testing the same thing, right? One in the browser and one in an actual test. Yeah.
So let's do that. Let's get Mailcatcher running, and then let's actually go run Rails S, and let's see if we can put in like an actual email address and actually send this.
Yeah, I like it. All right, so yeah, go ahead, Sydney.
Sorry, I'm reading. Yeah, I have to read it and then it has to stick. Okay.
So do we have to like do the gem install?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do I type? Gem install.
Mailcatcher, one word.
Catcher. Yeah. Okay. This could take a while. Is there some like config related stuff I need to do while that's finishing?
Yeah, in the development.ruby.
Be like
add just a config.actionMailer dot action_mailer dot delivery_method space equals space symbol SMTP. And then below that, you need config.actionMailer.smtp_settings equals space open curly brackets, symbol address, rocket, string localhost, one word, comma space, symbol port, rocket 1025, just the integer.
That's 25.
I think this is a good thing that you're practicing, right? We gotta have the technical language to be able to, you know, navigate someone else. So well done.
Nice. Cool. So it looks like
someone asked,
sorry.
Sorry, real quick. Someone asked in chat, what is the port mapping and why is it port 1025? So the port mapping here is basically saying, as Rails, if I want to use that mail command that we're using in our action mailer, how do I actually want to send that? So line 12 here is saying, I want to send that email using SMTP. And where I'm going to send that is defined on line 13. So what host name, what domain name am I going to try to connect to send that email, and on what port number? In this case, we're saying connect to localhost on port 1025 in order to try to send that email. And that's what Mailcatcher is going to listen on. So when you run Mailcatcher, it's actually going to listen on port 1025 and on another port, I think it's 1080. And 1080 is going to be the web interface for it, but 1025 is going to be like listen for incoming messages. And the reason that it uses 1025, port 25 is typically reserved for SMTP. But as a regular user on a system, like just, you know, whoever's logged in right now, I think we're looking at Phil's machine. So Phil, as a sort of regular unprivileged Unix user, can't run anything on a port number under 1000. And so Mailcatcher said, well, SMTP is typically 25. I have to connect to a port greater than 1000. So I'm going to make it 1025. HTTP unsecured is typically port 80, which is why it uses port 1080 or 1080, because again, it has to start on a port greater than 1000. So that's why it picked those as port numbers.
Okay, then I think we're gonna just as we're gonna put Mailcatcher into the command line to start up Mailcatcher. It's finished, right?
Yeah.
This is similar to like when you run Rails S, right? Like you're starting up a server, and this just happens to be now like the Mailcatcher server. Cool, there it is. And Ian put something that I just want to point out here about this interface. So this is just going to keep running now on your system. And if you want to shut this down, you need to hit that quit button in the top right to do that in order to stop the server. So just something to note about this, kind of like running after you run the Mailcatcher command.
Okay. I have grandmother eyes, so I can't really see what that's all saying.
Yeah,
but,
sorry.
Okay, cool. Well, we still don't have a test file testing this, so we need to.
That's okay though. We're actually gonna like try and actually run this just like our feature test. So we have Rails S running somewhere. So let's actually go load up that advice. Let's try to send it to an actual email address. It's not actually going to send a real email, because we're saying we're trying to send it on port 1025, which Mailcatcher is listening for. So Mailcatcher is actually going to grab that email, so it doesn't actually send anywhere.
So it's kind of like you can think of Mailcatcher as like an it's intercepting these emails before they can make it to the internet.
Looks like it's there. I think it'll be pretty empty because we haven't put anything in our views.
But we can see here we have the HTML version, we have the plain text version. The source is where it'll actually show you like all the headers. That's the date, the from, the reply to, the message ID, the MIME version. And then the content type multi-part, it gives you this boundary, and this MIME part 60242, blah, blah, blah. That's basically how the email client splits the plain text version, which it starts with. You can see the content type text plain if you go down just a little bit. that's basically where it's saying this next section is the plain text version. And then the next part where it sees that same MIME part 602 boundary, now it's saying now this part is going to be text HTML, and that's the HTML version of the email. And so email clients are going to look at this and go, I don't know what to do with this HTML version, but I'm going to show the plain text version, or vice versa. And so that's why we want to send both, because we don't know necessarily, even if they're on Gmail, they could still configure Gmail to only show plain text, for example.
Awesome. So if we wanted this to have any content, we could add a little message in here. I'm guessing we get access to like our advice instance variable, similar to a controller from I should be in our notifier mailer.
Yeah,
So
that's a good distinction to make, though, right? Like, because we had access to that instance variable in the controller, but now we have access to the instance variables that we set in our mailer within our ERB.
Okay, I'm getting confused because I thought we just said we weren't testing, or we weren't looking at what people are going to see. The people receiving the advice are going to see.
Well, so we weren't in that feature test.
Oh, okay. I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, we weren't in that feature test, but now we're kind of like, we're using Mailcatcher to actually like view whatever email comes through. And the emails are blank right now because we've told them to be blank, right? Like we haven't set them up to say anything. So we're just gonna maybe write like 1 or 2 lines of simple text here to see that it's working.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in at user. Yep.
Let's use.
And then couldn't you just call at message under that? Your beta, yeah. And then like from the best at friend. And I would like really specify like the best friend. Very important.
Cool. So then just in like the spirit of browser driven development, let's see if we can see that now. Another email.
Okay.
Sent to
we
user
got
object.
Nice.
Interesting.
Okay. So let's go. With
And also it's not paying attention to the line break formatting because this is the HTML version. You're gonna have to actually put paragraph tags around these things, but you can also use like header tags and that kind of stuff as well.
Okay.
And then you'll want to put similar content in the text version of this as well and verify that the text one worked.
Don't we want to go see what 3, like go pry and see what user is and why we're not getting back that actual name?
Yeah, so I could do like just an review here to see what user is. Yes, I'll do a.
What's that user? So at user, what are we calling?
Will the text version be able to take the p tags or no?
It'll literally print them as p tags, and so the plain text version you won't include the HTML markers.
So we need to do.
It can still do the ERB, but it won't. Like you won't be able to do. Well, I mean, if you send HTML tags, it will literally send those as literal characters.
Do
So
we
we
have
can,
a?
like-
In our, sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
I'm sorry. Do we have a user model, or is there? It looks like it's a user object.
Yeah, we do. That was kind of like set up beforehand.
Okay.
In the
Um,
mail catcher, I saw that since we set it up on the controller, if you look at like line 9, it says like if you go to the source tab, in name, it says from Phil McCarthy, like it had the full name. And so if we look at how we set that up, I would assume we could probably do a pretty similar thing, like over on the controller. Yeah, right over here. It's not controller mailer on line 9. We said at user.name. So I feel like we could probably just infer that we could do the same in our views. Like we'd still have access to it.
Same
Yeah,
method
there's
back
that
here.
little method. Yep.
So we can do name.
Do we need to have like a header tag for the hey friend?
I like that idea. Yeah, it's important to remember, you know, what type of file is this, because they're going to behave differently. HTML versus text, very different.
Tim, do you know if the plain text is going to have a problem with the HTML tags in there?
So Ian kind of alluded to this, but it would just print them as plain text, like that.
Okay.
They would show up as the tags, but we took those out.
All right.
Yeah, you would literally see like the little chevrons with the P and the /P and so on. You would literally see that in the message.
All right, that's glorious. Good stuff.
Nice. This is cool. We can see over on the right that this came through, and slightly differently based on, you know, the technology.
Okay, so now do we test this?
Yeah, I love that your anticipation for testing is always
We
imminent.
just test it. But you said it's not a feature test,
It's not. It's going to be a mailer test.
mailer test. Even though, okay, that's throwing me off because there's views and I feel like I see it. It's views. Okay. Mailer.
I'm just looking at the lesson plan. There's a section, like the very last big code block. Looks like that's, not sure, Tim and Ian, if you'd like us to follow the like first part of this. Is that setting it up in a controller?
Yeah, they're kind of like it's like kind of combining where the final block of code is kind of like the finished block, and then the first few blocks are kind of like showing you how you would grab the email in your test file. This can like work in any test file, but we want to put it in a mailer. But it's kind of like showing you like, hey, let's ensure that when we do these things, like we can grab the email object, and then we can kind of like, from having the email object, we can start to like assert certain parts of it.
So then would we want to do like is there mailers already in there under test? Do we already have that in our folder?
Yeah, I think under spec, we can check it out and see if we have it.
Doesn't look like it.
Yeah, we don't have that yet.
And then can we just add mailer? And this is like a user mailer.
It says friend notifier.
Friend notifier. Okay.
It's like named after the mailer that we created. So
Yeah.
friend notifier up here, we have a friend notifier mailer.
Yeah. And then you just
Save.
Hey, Phil, up above with the friend notifier up above, is there a space between friend and notifier? Would that matter?
You require your rows.
Like in the view, your directory is friend underscore notifier, but in your spec, you're doing friend notifier with no space. I don't know if that'll run into a problem.
I don't think it matters.
Oh, it doesn't? Okay, well.
It's a good thing to be like looking at that, because a lot of times those things do matter.
For the name of the test file, it really doesn't matter what you name the test as long as it has underscore spec at the end of the file name.
Okay.
And even though we have this under spec mailers, in this case, it's actually a really good idea on line 3 to actually put type mailer on there. So as our spec is reading this, it goes, okay, you really do want this to be a mailer test. So when we have like type feature, type request, type mailer, type model, it actually unlocks different kinds of what we call DSLs or domain specific languages about how we can actually write the test and what we have access to. For example, when we do a feature test, we can use the visit keyword. But if you're doing a request test, you don't have visit. But in a request test, you can do a get or a post or a delete. Instead, you can actually use the verb, but you can't use the verb in a feature test. And so the type of the test actually unlocks different capabilities of Capybara and RSpec working together.
So then you'll do describe, friend, notifier, mailer. And then in your second describe, you'll inform. And then we're going to make 2 objects or 1. Before that, called sending underscore user. And that's going to be set to user.create, and we're going to give it a hash as a params. And it's going to have in there first name, first underscore name, set to a string of Ray, R-E-Y. And then last name set to, oh my gosh, Palpatine, P-A-L-P-I-T-I-N-E, yes. And then email set to string of Ray at drop off Golden Sun. Or drop of Golden Sun, sorry. .com.
Cool.
And then a password as a string of the best Jedi. And that's the whole thing. And then we have another variable, email underscore info. Oh, sorry. Let me let you be great. Let me stop myself.
Oh, you're good. So
email underscore info set to a hash with 3 keys, user, which is equal to sending user. A friend, which is set to string of Kylo Ren, which is K-Y-L-O space R-E-N. And then third key is message, set to string work through your anger with exercise, comma, and wear a mask.
I was going to say, I think when you're passing in the user.create, it shouldn't be in a hash. So it'll just be parentheses, no squiggly bracket.
It'll actually work. It'll work as
say.
both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, both ways will work.
Okay.
And then it says let mail. So let parens colon mail space open brace squiggly brace.
Squiggly brace. Okay.
Friend notifier mailer, the class. Dot inform, which takes an argument of email underscore info and string Kylo Ren @besties.com. All right, and then we are going to start an it block. And then there, we're going to test that it renders the headers. Oh man, okay. We're going to expect mail.subject to equal string Ray Palpatine is sending you some advice. And then if you, let's see, if you wanted to like copy down that line, and you can change the differences. Then it's mail.to equal brackets quote brackets outside of the quotes. And then the email kyloren@besties.com.
So kind of like this, Kylo Ren.
Yes.
@besties.com. Cool.
And then copy that down. And then change mail.to to mail.from. And the email in this one is friendly@advice.io. Last one. Copy that one down. Do you want the email first, or I can make it easy for that? Whatever works for you. That's reply to. And then email is brackets, quotes, ray@dropofgoldensun.com.
Now, it does seem a little weird that this is an array, like we're expecting the to address to be an array when you can only set one to address or one from address. This is just the way it actually gets unpacked within the mailer. And that's one thing that you need to be aware of when you're testing these. You can't just say, I expect the to address to just be a string. It has to be a string inside of an array. It's just a weird gotcha that we have to conform to there. That's why it's in an array.
Is that because maybe not in this interface, but in other interfaces you could have more than one to?
Yeah, well, for the to address and carbon copy and blind carbon copy, those could be more than one. But a from address, you can only set one from address. You can only set one reply to address. But for some reason, it's treating all the email addresses the same way and putting everything inside an array. So I think they just do that as a consistency kind of thing, but it does feel a little weird to look for a to address that's actually in an array, but that's why.
Okay. So sorry, another question. Because I used to work for my last job, like we would have to send like department emails. So like you'd be logged into your own email, but you would change the from to come from like the department. In that case, is that like technically coming from two places, or you're overriding the from when you set it to the department?
You'd be overriding it. But the headers showing like the sort of all the server paths and everything that it took to send from your machine to a mail server to their machine, it'll actually show that it came from your machine. So it'll say like, this came from Sydney's computer, but the from address is like, department@company.com or whatever.
Okay. So let's see if that passes.
Might have a syntax error there. I'm not sure. So
let me just make sure I didn't forget to tell you anything.
Okay, looks like our subject is different.
But we decided to say we can change it to that if you'd like.
Yeah, and that's because we kind of deviated from the lesson plan, right, with how we set up some of our message.
forget to change something?
No, so if we go back and we look at mail catcher, we'll actually see that we didn't set the from address properly, or the to address. One of them didn't actually come in correct. If we look at the from header, the from should be an email address, and we actually set that as a string. And so the from address didn't set properly in our mailer. So we need to go back to our actual mailer and see what we're doing in here. So the from we set to @user.name. It should be at
user.email. Yeah.
Okay. Try that once more.
And this shall fail again.
Yeah.
Just because so in the lesson plan, we didn't add this from. Remember, I told Adam, I was like, oh, you can kind of deviate and do what you want to do. So what it would have been set by is application mailer's default. Remember, we set that default before. And so that's what this test is looking for. But we've overridden that, which is totally in our capacity to do here as the from. But then now we're just kind of testing for the wrong thing.
So this should be there.
Yep. And that's just in case you don't set a from address like we did in our mailer. It'll just use whatever that default one is in our action mailer setup. So the rest of the lesson plan will basically say, now how do we pick apart like the body of the message? And there's content in there about like, how can I test just the text version of the email? How can I test just the HTML version of the email? There's a way to combine it and just say like, I expect the email content, like just mail.body to include, such and such. I generally discourage doing that because if we are specifically setting up both plain text and HTML versions of the message, then you should test both of those to make sure that they're both setting properly. But then you can also verify that, the content of those messages is being set up the way that we expected it to be.
Yeah, and I think for this part, like, just so we can kind of like walk through it, you can copy and paste this renders the body block in there, and then we can kind of show that. Cool. So like, as Ian was saying, like we are, breaking up this test to be like, hey, if we're going to create a text.html file and we're going to create an HTML file, then we need to test those separately because those indeed are separate entities. And for our tests to be kind of, robust and complete, they need to be tested, separately. What was I going to say? Go ahead, Ian.
On line 33 and 34, that's basically where we're saying like, I don't want to test specifically HTML or plain text. I just want to look at the whole body. So that would be a way to test, like I expect the content of the email to look something like this. I expect it to include these various strings. But line 27 and 28, that's just testing the plain text because it's looking at the text part of the body, like where it does that split of the content. And line 30 and 31 are looking at the HTML part. And so if you do have slightly different sort of layout or content, then you can actually look very specifically for those kinds of things. This is most important when you're doing links to things like click here to unsubscribe. The plain text version, the click here is actually going to be an actual URL because you can't make an HTML link in a plain text email. You actually have to write out the whole URL. Where in the HTML version, you would say, I expect, that the string just has like, click here to unsubscribe. And I expect that mail HTML part.body has a link called, click here, and that its path is set to blah, blah, blah. Where the plain text version is, I just expect the full URL to be in there. And so you can get pretty specific on just testing things about the plain text version versus the HTML version. And you can go into the Ruby docs or the Rails docs and read way more about like the capabilities of RSpec and Capybara for testing out these email things. For now, though, I would comment out line 33 and 34. I put them in there just as an example of like, this is how you could look at the entire body of the message. Now, this test may not pass again because we've kind of formatted things a little bit differently. But it'll give you some ideas on how to go through into it. And Tim dropped a link in the Zoom chat for how to do that. And yes, apologies to Liam for the spoiler alerts on the last Star Wars movie.
It's cool. I'm behind. It's been a long time. I deserve it.
So yeah, I think fixing these would just be a one-by-one thing. I know we're almost out of time. Do we want to work through that, or we good?
I think we're okay on that. The one thing that I'm would love to look into is how this work through your anger with exercise and where a mask is getting set. Did we? Because I don't remember setting that anywhere. So I'm interested to see like where that comes through. Kind of feel like it's probably some of that. Oh, okay, we set in an email info. Got it. Cool. Yeah, and I mean, so the reason that this is failing, if we bring up our ERB files, we can kind of like look at that. Yeah, we created our own message, right? So we got to test for that message as well, which the lesson plan doesn't know about this message that we created, but that's all right. Cool. All right. So I know today was like a little different, but gonna drop the class survey. Would love your feedback on it. And yeah, appreciation to all of my navigators, everyone that spoke up and kind of like said something that to help out the driver. Big appreciations to Phil for driving through that. Any final thoughts, any final questions kind of on your mind at this point?
I had a question. Just Ian, you talked in chat something about the before each earlier, and we're not using it before each for all this setup. We're just doing it kind of like right after the describe. Is there anything you'd like to add on that? Or?
I mean, the convention would be to put those kinds of things in it before each. It happens to work just because of how Ruby is parsing the stuff. But if you're doing multiple tests in there, it would be a good idea to put that kind of stuff in it before each. And then down at the bottom of the test where it's saying like, expect these things to exist in the body of the message, you could string interpolate that from the actual email info hash that we built. So you don't have to type out that stuff over and over again. You can just say, I expect that, you know, I'm going to use this variable and just string interpolate it in here, and I expect the body to contain that string. So it'd be a good idea to just string interpolate that stuff so you're not typing that stuff out over and over, because then you can just change the setup and your test should still pass. So that would be the only thing that I would do there. So I've made a note for myself to go and update that lesson plan for next time.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Yeah, we've got lunch and then we've got work time, and I think we have check-ins today, I believe.
We got our squishies.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got some squishies. I don't think.
Can you say what that is, Tim? I've never heard of this.
Yeah, I didn't think we did this last mod, so apologies for not giving you all the opportunity last mod. But it's kind of like a one-on-one with Ian and I. It's really the intent is for both of us to kind of get to know one another a little bit better outside of any like formal class setting, and then really to check in on y'all. Like, how are you doing? Like outside of anything code related, we don't have to talk about, we won't talk about code. We can talk about strategies around, you know, handling Turing life, if that's something, or just like we could, you know, talk about really anything that y'all want, but it's really just a check-in for us, and it's one-on-one with either Ian or I.
Or if you want to chat about the mid-mod on Friday, if you want to chat about the project, if you want to talk about like upcoming project ideas, if you got ideas for consultancy, like we're happy to just chat about whatever you want to chat about. Even if it's just like, you know, what's your favorite beverage of choice? Like, you know, it's just to get to know you a little bit. And we've tried to be more intentional, especially now that we're remote, to have these conversations with students just so we can get to know you a little bit, since we can't actually chum around in a classroom with each other. So we've got them scheduled for today and tomorrow. So if you haven't signed up for a spot yet, go do that. And if your team has not yet signed up for an eval tomorrow morning, please do so. The eval time, when your team is not evaling, there is something on the calendar for you to go watch one of 2 videos or both. One was recorded by Dion, who taught a couple of innings back, and the other one was taught by me, who taught even farther back. But it's going to be how to build an API now. So up until now, we've been consuming APIs. This lesson plan will be on how to build an API. And you'll get to hear some of the different questions that were raised in class. This will be necessary for the solo project coming up. And so you will have to watch that. Whether you want to watch it as a team or watch it individually, it'll be up to you. But you will need that for the solo kickoff that we're doing tomorrow afternoon. So while you're not doing your eval with your team tomorrow, please have a look through that video. And then I think that's about it for tomorrow. And then, yeah, we'll have more check-ins after that. We'll talk a little bit tomorrow about mid-mod and what to expect for that, and grading and assessments and getting you scores and notes and all that good stuff too.
Cool. Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Could we sign up for a squishy from both Ian and Tim, or you, for different perspectives on something, or is that too much time?
I would say let's make sure that everybody has the opportunity to sign up, and if there are spots left over, then yes. But we'd love to hear from all of you. There should be enough time on the calendar to hear from everybody on the class. And if there is extra time, then yeah, we could do so. But this won't be the only time that we'll have one-on-ones. If you ever want to just have a chat or get perspective on something, you can always DM us and find a time on our calendar and stuff like that. We'd be happy to chat to you.
Yeah, just want to re-emphasize that the door is open. If y'all ask for time, you'll get it. Cool. All right, y'all. Lunchtime. Look out for the attendance thread.
Cool. See you, folks.
Thanks.